I am so excited to welcome Gabriel Cian to the podcast Live the Health You Want. He's doing some amazing things. He was in the tech industry for 40 years, and now he's in health and longevity. He wants to live to be 100. That really resounded with me because I'm going for 140. David Sinclair at Harvard says we can live that long, and I'm actually at 73, I consider myself middle-aged because of that. But I'm really interested in what got you started on the path for longevity. I'm very impressed. There is a trend for people your age doing preventative medicine, which I guess you're looking at all the baby boomers and all the health issues we have, and you don't want to end up in the same boat where the last couple decades of your life are in procedures and medications and all that kind of thing. So I'm really interested in what got you started on this very necessary path.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for hosting me, for having me on your podcast. I've been in the tech industry for 20 years because now I'm 43. So I started at 23. So it's not 40, or you could include the first 20 years of my life, considering that I had to learn stuff before I started creating startups in the tech space. But anyway, so I'm 43, and I see my life as divided into two parts. Part one was as a startup entrepreneur in the tech space with artificial intelligence, big data, all those things that are really exciting. Um, and now I'm beginning the second part of my life where longevity is, what I'm waking up for in the morning and, what keeps me up at night also. So just to tell you a little bit of my story and how I came into longevity. I sold my last startup in 2021. I was 40 at the time. And I started looking for my next venture, my next project.
Mhm.
And very quickly, longevity came into play because there are so many fascinating research projects ongoing right now in mitochondrial replacement, in hair repigmentation. You get the color of the hair you had when you were young. About organ replacement. So many things that at first sight I thought this is marketing bullshit. And I spent a year discussing with as many researchers, as many
Oh,
doctors, as many entrepreneurs and venture capitalists as possible all around the world to try to understand this ecosystem and to try to make sure that this is really for real. This is ongoing research right now, and you would be very surprised, but some of the research is on very short term. Some of them are more like futuristic, but some of them are on the short term. Like for example, there is a Japanese a company, a research team working on teeth regrow. Can you imagine this? And the clinical trials are happening right now, and they are supposed to end by 2030, like in 6 years. And
I'm
in
sorry,
six
excuse me.
years,
What kind of regrowth?
teeth
Oh,
regrow. So
teeth. Teeth?
yeah, absolutely. So
To
imagine
regrow
you
teeth.
lose your
Wow.
teeth for whatever reason, and then you take like a magic cocktail, and then like the tooth is regrowing. Can you imagine that? It's
That's really,
absolutely
I've
incredible.
never heard of that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, me neither. So now I know all this stuff, and I know it's for
Yeah.
real. It's not just marketing or stories. And they have started the clinical trials already. They're ongoing, and they're supposed to release something mass market in the 20 in 2030, so in
So they're
6 years.
close. I
So
mean, that's not that
yeah,
long.
they're close. Yeah, it's tomorrow in the biotech and in the health space. And some of
Exactly.
them, of course, it's like in 10, 15 years. But again, we need to prepare today for what is going to happen for the problems, the health problems that we would have in 10, 15, to 15 years or 20 years. So
Absolutely.
we have no time. That's the action plan. So for me, and just to answer your initial question, I really feel that after the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence that we see right now, and everyone wants to invest in this space, and like, it's a no-brainer that this is going to disrupt our world just as we know it. I think the next revolution is going to be the revolution of living organisms, of understanding biology. And I want to be part of that revolution. So that's sort of, the reason why I got into this space. And I see myself in the next 40 years working in the space and trying to accelerate the pace towards this like utopia where we are able to understand the processes of aging to such an extent where we can slow down the pace of aging, stop it, or let's be crazy, even reverse it.
Well, if you can regrow teeth, that's pretty, I've never even imagined that. And it just goes to show
Can you
you
imagine?
there's
It's
no
it's crazy.
limitations. There's no limitations.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think
And
that's so fascinating. And it gives me hope that your generation is this interested in using all the knowledge you already have. I mean, you grew up in tech. And your whole horizons are just so wide. It's fascinating for me because I mean, you figure I started out when you needed to know something, you went to the library and you looked up the books. If you were lucky, you got two of the five you wanted. And now all you have to do is put a query in and you have all the information that anyone ever had. You have to go through it. But it's just such a, to me, when AI came out and my kids were kind of against it, oh, it's going to ruin writers, it's going to ruin art. I said, no, this is where you start from now. Look at all this stuff that's coming to you. It's like you bounce off from that and go further. I think I love AI. I think it helps me a lot. It's kind of, when I do my posts with it or when I'm doing a presentation, I always credit my research team, my AI research team, because that's what it's like. And you complement each other and it's really like almost a person. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's
absolutely.
fascinating.
Absolutely.
I looked at, your website and some of the things you're involved in. I really liked your website. I thought it was very comprehensive. You pretty much cover the bases and you have a company where people can put it, you had a wellness quiz, which I took. And right away you can see, about where you are. And I put a couple things in that, like one thing, I don't really smoke anymore, but I wanted to see what you said. And there was something else. But anyway, what came back was some really good advice, but not anything too specific because you don't know people. You don't know who it is and what their issues are and all that. But I thought that was very helpful. And also, you offer doctors and a whole program where someone can go through and improve their health because everybody's different and everybody has a different optimal health level. And it's very individual. And I think we don't really realize that enough. I even down to supplements. I'm talking about David Sinclair's longevity supplements, NMN with resveratrol. That's what he likes together. But I'm thinking he weighs 180 or whatever he weighs, and I'm 115. Do I need the same amount? Everybody's body's different, so I'll go a little lighter because I'm smaller than the
Yeah.
average person. So I think,
Yeah, absolutely. So if you start to, so once you understand that this is ongoing, this is for real, and we are on the verge of cracking the code of living organisms, then you start to wonder, how am I going to apply this to myself? And this is where you start the practical stuff. David Sinclair, as you say, Peter Attia, and so many
right.
others.
Yeah,
And then you start understanding things and try to apply to yourself. And this is what happened to me. And at some point, you end up understanding that you're not a doctor. And of course, you understand the general mechanisms behind what you're doing, but you don't know the specifics. And at that point, you could hurt yourself if you don't work with a specific and specialized longevity doctor. And this
absolutely.
is where I came. I applied to myself what I'm trying to offer now for as many patients as possible. It's very risky to apply this knowledge of longevity to yourself without appropriate assistance. And this is what we do with one of the projects I'm involved in, which is IKare.ai, where we pair each patient with a medical doctor and with a health coach to help them with the medical expertise, with the recommendations, but also with the implementation of those recommendations into their daily habits. Because this is like going to the fitness gym. You need to practice.
Yes.
It's not enough to pay. It's not enough to know what you have to do. You really actually have to do it. And the health coach is helping you with implementing all those recommendations into your daily routines.
I agree. You can do it on your own by getting the information, but you go so much further if you have a doctor for your medical issues or a health professional. I have a trainer for strength training. I will not, I had a gym for 12 years. I know what to do, but I cannot make myself work that hard on my own. I cannot. And I
Yeah.
started really seriously weight training when I was 50, and I got in amazing
Wow.
shape then. And I'm doing the same thing now. I kind of got away from it a little bit. It's hard to stay in it, and when you get out of your routine, it's very hard to get back in. But I like the community you're establishing. That's another thing. And well, first of all, your name, the I Care with a K, that's a fabulous name because it incentivizes community. And people need to be connected. I think a lot
Yes.
of us are kind of isolated with all our devices and, we work alone at home, a lot of us. And I think the connectivity of that, I care, there's like a community, and you have a community. That's one of your other entities is a community where anyone can join and present what they're bringing to the table or their ideas. I think that's fabulous. I think you pretty much are covering all bases. And then you have a foundation. I'm just going over this real quick and we can do a deeper dive. Your foundation, you're allowing people to bring their ideas to you and help get funded. And, if your community thinks they're valuable, that's fabulous. I think I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed. Gives me
Thank you.
hope for
Thank
the
you very
youth
much.
because I
This
see a
is
lot of the opposite. I see a lot of people I mean, marijuana is legal everywhere. It seems to impact productivity. And I mean, I think it's better than alcohol. If you have to hide from reality, I think you're better off from the marijuana than alcohol because alcohol can make you mean and violent and cause accidents. And the other marijuana, you're just going to kind of sit home and be quiet and then maybe not bother anybody, hopefully. But at any rate,
Yeah,
far
honestly,
better
I
is to
had
get
some very
healthy. Far better is to dive into I mean, it's such a precious gift to be alive, I think. I think
absolutely.
that started with me. I decided I don't know, it's like 30 or something. I'm gonna have to have a happy life no matter what because you can go either way. You can dwell, it's kind of like a spectrum. You can dwell in all the horrible things going on and lament and complain, and then you're attracting that energy and it just never ends. Or you can find like the wonderful things that are going on. And there's sure a lot of that. Like the research is incredible what people are doing with longevity and energy medicine and PEMF. Have you looked into that at all? Those kind of things?
Yeah, also it's a pretty controversial, and to be honest, what we do at IKare.ai, and I try to apply to myself also, is this 80-20 rule, where we are going to go for the fundamentals first, what is very important, what is certain, and then once you sort of secure those bricks, then you add more and more sophisticated treatments and explore new directions. And I haven't come to that place where I'm going to try PEMF, or I have rapamycin right now. I'm
Oh, you do?
creating yeah, I mean, I have the pills, but I haven't started taking them because I
Right.
want to put in place a measurement protocol to make sure that,
Okay.
because it's very important for me to measure everything and not just take stuff or do stuff and hope that it's going to generate a positive effect. So yeah, it's an ongoing process. And
It's a
I've been
quest. It's
here.
a health
Yeah,
quest,
it's a
a
quest,
lifelong health
absolutely. And it
quest.
takes a lot of time, and it's like investment. It's like personal development. It's a journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like for instance, I have a DO, a doctor of osteopathy, who's very much involved in prevention. And I like that. I saw that in a lot of, your website material and things like that,
Absolutely.
because people don't really think about that. So anything that I ever had, any issue, we always try to determine the cause instead of treating the symptoms. And I've been going to him for 30 years. So he's like the mainstay of my team, Dr. Fenton. When COVID broke out, I did some interviews of him because I was so upset. All everyone was talking about was, where are the masks? Where's the vaccination? I'm like, what can we do to not get it? How can we make ourselves stronger? How can we build our immune systems up so we don't get it? And he recommended supplements and I posted on YouTube. I thought this is going to go viral. Not at all. All anybody wanted then was the masks and I was so disappointed in that. But you're on that path as far as prevention.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I really think, I mean, people don't realize, I think, how important what they eat, the effect it has on their body. I think we eat for the mercy of our taste, for the benefit of our taste buds, when we really need to be feeding our microbiome what it needs, because that's what's making things happen. And I think there's so much more awareness
Yes.
about that now, which is helpful.
Absolutely. Reality is so much different from the one we have been educated to believe it is.
Absolutely.
People are used and educated to take pills when they consider that everything is fine because nothing hurts. They have no symptoms. And they wait in that sort of ignorance until something is hurting. And then they're going to see the doctor. And what they're waiting for from the doctor is pills.
To
They don't
fix it.
understand that physical activity is much better and stronger, more impactful than pills, and the
Absolutely.
diet, and then sleep. Sleep is so important. We live in a society, and I plead guilty for this. For 40 years, my philosophy was sleep less, you'll sleep when you're dead. And I was, going in the direction of aging at an accelerated pace,
Right.
and really, going closer and closer to that to that outcome. And at 40, I understood that sleep is so important, and you really need to take care of that. And at that point, before 40, when I was stressed or I had like a lot of intensity in my work and my to-do list was too long, the first thing that were jumping out of the to-do list were first sleep, second physical activity. You know, after 40, those ones never go away. They are on top of the list
Perfect.
no matter what happens. And I
Excellent.
wished I knew all these things and somebody told me, but there was nobody to tell me at that point. And, I had so many weak signs of and subtle signs my body sent me that I was sort of overcharging myself.
Oh,
I was living at my own expense, at my body's expense. Um, for example, I had dandruff, and from the social point of view, it was a big mess, a big problem for me. And I've tried see so many doctors, um, try so many treatments, shampoos, expensive pills, and everything. Nothing seemed to work. I Nobody told me that I would just have to cool down, sleep 7 to 8 hours per night, and take care of my diet. Nobody told me that. They were all the time trying to sell a shampoo, a pill, all sorts of treatments, oils, etc. Nothing seemed to work because they were treating the symptoms and not the cause of it.
exactly. And that's what we are trained to do that. When I was brought
We are
up, doctor was
educated,
godlike.
absolutely.
You never disagreed with the
Yes,
doctor.
absolutely.
The
Some of
doctor,
them, some of them still have the same mindset today.
some of them do. And actually, there's a trend in doctors that, can you imagine? I mean, you went to medical school and here comes your patient. I saw on the internet that I can do this and that has to be frustrating for them. Because they spent all that time and now someone you're telling me you saw something on the internet and you're questioning my knowledge.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah,
interesting
I had the
time.
same. Yeah, absolutely. Technology is a sort of frustrating for these kind of people. Like my father, for example, it's not related to medicine, but it's related to the GPS. Everyone has GPSs right now in the car. But he
Exactly.
was like, no, no, I know exactly the roads. I know we need to go over there. And I was like, no, 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 no. There is a lot of traffic out there. Let's take another one. The GPS knows about it. And he
Right.
was like, no, no way. But at some point, he had to accept reality, which was that the GPS is better than him, and he cannot possibly know the traffic that is all on each road. And at some point, there was an inflection point in his behavior, and now he's using a
Now he
GPS
loves
like
it.
everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are going into this direction, but it's going to take 30 years. And I would like to accelerate the pace and make those
Ah.
kind of treatments as accessible, as affordable as possible to virtually anyone. That's
Well,
what we're trying to do
it
with
is
IKare
expensive. I'm
AI.
sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is expensive a lot of times. The
It
treatment.
is because,
The
yes, absolutely, because you have to pay for security, for insurance, medical insurance. But the medical insurance doesn't take preventative medicine into account. So you end
no.
up paying twice. First for like the mandatory insurance, medical insurance, and then on top of it, huge amounts of money for preventative medicine. And
Well, the
most of the
insurance,
time,
yeah.
in different countries, I don't know how it is in the United States, but in France, even if you accept to pay a lot of money, there's no medical facilities, and everything is built in such a way that you just cannot access those medical facilities to get your VO2 max, your DEXA scan, your genome sequencing, and the rest of the like the data collection and exam that you're supposed to have for preventative medicine and longevity.
Well, I noticed that you have a lot of really good blood work tests, and I'm kind of on that same
I
page.
do.
Blood work, I'm like a blood work vampire. I love to look at blood work because it's such a great snapshot, of where you are right then, and it tells you so much. And I think a lot of the tests, like they didn't even have C-reactive protein test as a normal test for a long time. Now it is. And I think insurance covers that now. In the US, it's kind of like they have like a wellness check that is included with your insurance, but it's basic. It has maybe about a tenth of the blood work that you have. And the DO, like I said, that I go to is goes very deep into blood work. For instance, I guess it was, and I was in my 40s, I had some kind of liver problem, and we did a saliva, urine, and blood work test, sent it to a group called I think it was Smoky Mountain Labs. They sent back a 24-page report about my liver, and it turned out I had metal toxicity. I'd had a lot of dental work with mercury. A lot of people have issues
A
with
lot
that.
of people had problems like this. Even Tony Robbins in his book explains into great detail how he was eating huge quantities of salmon because it's recommended for longevity and omega-3 and
Exactly.
so on. But at the same time, there was a high concentration in lead, I think, or mercurium.
Of mercury, yeah. And actually,
Yeah,
salmon isn't, if you can get wild caught, it's better. But how do you know it's really wild caught? I mean, there's so many things. What I think is really necessary is some kind of like little device that you could like touch the food with. It'll tell you what the level of mercury is. It'll tell you what's in it. That's to me the future. When I can analyze my food,
absolutely.
because I can say, well, hey, I can eat one thing that has mercury in it in a month and I'll probably survive. But if I have issues with my liver, maybe I don't want to. You know what I mean? You can make better decisions. So I really, because of that, I wouldn't eat scallops right now. I haven't eaten tuna in 30 years because it's known to have a lot of mercury. So, but then
Yeah,
again,
absolutely.
yeah. So
But
again,
all these devices, and this is also part of what I'm trying to do here, is all those devices are becoming more and more affordable. And some of them, which that do not even exist today, are going to cost a couple of dollars in 5 years or so.
right,
So the
exactly.
technology is going into this direction, and I can't wait to have different devices, just as the CGMs, the continuous glucose monitors that were at some point reserved for type 2 diabetes people. And now you can buy it for $60 and you can monitor in real time your glucose levels for 2 weeks.
I'm
That's
wearing one.
astounding. That's
I'm wearing
great.
one
I'm
right
wearing
now.
one also.
You have?
I so happen to have a
I
pullover.
have to tell you, my
So
DO said to me, he
yeah,
said, my last blood work. He said, well, your insulin is low. Good thing. Everyone wants their insulin low. I mean, that's like the elephant in the room. You don't know if people get their
yeah.
sugar, their glucose tested, but if your insulin's high, you're going to get diabetes, and they don't test that. So he said to me, your insulin's low, so either your pancreas has stopped working entirely or you're doing really well. I said, I'm going to go with the latter. But then I got a glucose monitor, and I noticed. Like I'll eat and then my glucose will go way up and then it comes way down. But the alarm goes off in the middle of the night because it'll go really low and I'm okay. But if I was diabetic, I'd need insulin then. But you know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of wondering about that. I mean, it
Yeah.
goes like to 68, 670, something like that. That's the range in the US, I think is too high, what's acceptable. But did learn my glucose is running like an average of 110. That's too high, I think. Although
Yes, it
maybe for my
is. I mean,
body
the
it's okay.
recommended
Yeah. Under
levels
100.
are below 100.
Yeah.
90, 80 is great.
See, I'm gonna see what my average is today. I'm obsessed with it. I love this app. I just hold the phone up.
Yeah.
You have the same one? It's by
I
Abbott?
yeah, but exactly.
That's so
We
funny
have the
you
same
have that.
one.
I bought it. I was in London and I bought it, but I signed up to the US app and it wouldn't work. So then I got back in the US, they sent me a new one. And you have to have a prescription to get it in the US. I bought it over the counter in the UK.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. To be
I went into
honest,
the pharmacy. I said, "Oh, I want one of those Abbott things." You have to get a prescription. I said, "What?"
this is crazy.
It
I
is
mean,
crazy.
it's unacceptable to have the money to be able to pay for something and to not be able to purchase it. And right now, there are a lot of tricks and a lot of strategies to still find treatments in Europe. Eventually, even travel to different countries to do some medical tourism in order to get access to different treatments, different pills, different devices. So yes, I also think that I can help a great deal people from all over the world with all those kind of strategies because it's a nightmare when you start in the field and you want to get access to those kind of treatments. It's almost
Like, how
impossible.
do you, right, where do you go and how do you know
Yeah,
the
so
doctor? And
I live in France. France is in the European Union, which is a legal mess with so many countries. And you can get prescriptions from different doctors outside of France and still be considered as valid treatments for the pharmacies and drugstores in France. So there are, glitches and imperfections in the legal system that allows you to take advantage of it. Um, from time to time, like for example, a DEXA scan. There is no DEXA scan in the region where I live, like the half the south of France. You don't have a DEXA scan. It's absolutely
not at
incredible. So
all?
I had to travel,
Oh,
not to my knowledge, and
uh,
it's impossible. If it's somewhere, it's well hidden and nobody knows about it. It's not on the internet, at least, and ChatGPT doesn't know about it, so it doesn't exist for me, right? So I had to go in another country in Europe, in Romania, and I got it on the spot in the
you had to go to
morning. You
Romania?
schedule the meeting. In the afternoon, you get the exam and you receive your bone density and your body composition, your fat mass, your lean mass, and everything. So yeah, not easy and expensive because of the fact that you need to spend a lot of time to look for those treatments, to find how to have access to them and then eventually travel to get access to the ones that you don't have in your proximity.
That's pretty crazy. So, what other progress have you come across in science and the research besides te growing teeth? What really excites you about the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So the future looks really fabulous. And I'm also trying to fund some of those startups, um, hoping that at least some of them are going to be successful enough to bring me some return on investment, but also, and most importantly, additional years of healthy life. That's my main
Yeah.
purpose right now. So, some examples, mind blowing. Um, there is a startup trying to inject brain cells into different portions of your brain to prevent neurodegenerative diseases.
What kind of
And so
cells?
that um, astrocytes, and they are doing some research on neurons also.
Okay.
But yeah, it's maybe going to take 10, 15 years. But it's still ongoing, and they're doing this on different models, so it's absolutely astounding. And their idea is to inject small quantities of brain cells so that your brain, thanks to neuroplasticity, is going to adopt those cells, but it's not going to change your personality per se because it's a small amount, and then after 6 months, they are going to replace other cells and so on. So the
That's
company is
fascinating.
called BE Therapeutics. It's an American company. The guy founder is called Jean Hébert. And yeah, so that's another example. So those are just examples. There are hundreds of people and hundreds of startups working in those fields. So those are just a couple of examples. Another example, um, United Therapeutics, what they're doing is 3D organ printing. So organs
I'm
have
waiting
two
for this.
components.
I'm waiting for
Yeah,
the
me
3D
too, me
organ
too, and
print.
and it's coming. It's coming really quickly. So
I
they they
bet.
they are working right now on the structure of one of the most complex organs in the human body, which is lungs, because lungs have those kind of ramifications, and which go up to level 24. So you have one ramification, go into two, and then to four, and then to eight, and so on. And what they can do right now is 3D print the scaffold of the lung up to level 18 or 19 in complexity. And the human lungs have a complexity of 24, but every year they go further and further with one or two levels per year. So if they continue with this pace, in a couple of years, we would be able to have lungs that have the scaffold that have the same level of complexity and compatibility with your own lungs. And
That's
then
amazing.
they are going to populate those scaffolds with cells that they have extracted from your skin, and they have de-differentiated them, brought them back to the state of stem cells, and then they have differentiated them into lung cells.
That's
And
amazing.
you will end up having organs that you see them in a jar, right? And then you get them transplanted into your body. And that's also it's absolutely mind-blowing, you know.
That's the future. That's the future for
Same
sure.
technology for hearts. This is They have already transplanted such a heart. No, they have done xenotransplantation, to my knowledge, which means um, the heart of a pig, which is similar in complexity, size, and structure to the one of a human being. And they have taken away all the cells from the pig. They kept only the scaffold, and they have populated that scaffold with own the own cells of the patient, and they have transplanted this into a patient. And unfortunately, the patient died 3 months after the surgery because of some unforeseen virus
Oh
that
no.
was yeah that was harmless for the pig, but unfortunately deadly for the human being. But they have made progress. They understood what was the problem, and then they, like the next ones, they're going to take into account this problem and eventually end up transplanting something into a human being, and that patient is going to live like years and years in good health.
That's
So those
fascinating.
are again just examples, but yeah, all these things are ongoing, and
Yeah,
there is so little money invested into this when you look compared to other treatments, to other investments, to other ventures, that I think that it's really surprising how much we can do with so little resources, and how much more we could do if we were able to influence our governments and our investors to invest more money into this technology.
I really agree. I think, and I don't know, there is a lot of money right now, and a lot of people have the interest that you do. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have been successful, see the need, and it gives me hope for the future. It really does. I think it's almost like
Absolutely.
whatever you can imagine can come to be. Like I picture like a woman getting pregnant, and they can analyze the health of the fetus and maybe give her something or inject something that will correct maybe something that's not correct in the baby that it won't be born with a defect. They may be able to correct it in utero. I mean, there's no reason why we can't do that. I really think with neurons though, I think I'm learning a lot about that in meditation. Like you can do you get involved in that at all? I didn't see that in what I looked. I haven't read every single thing on your website and everything, but I didn't see a lot about anything like that. Do you also are you a proponent of that?
So, in my personal life, I'm not practicing meditation per se, but I'm practicing something that involves meditation. It's called Tantra. It's a
Okay.
mix of massages, meditation, and dancing, and different. It's pretty difficult to explain
I'm familiar.
what's going
I'm
on,
a
but
little familiar with it. Yeah, this is kind
yeah,
of
but the audience maybe could wonder what this is. And to be
yes.
honest, when you look on the internet, you will see things that are really not representative of what it really is. So
Okay.
the best way to explain this is a mix of, well, just as I said, massage, um, meditation, and dance, and to invite people to try for themselves and evaluate useful for them or not, and eventually to continue if it's important. But yeah, not stop at just reading and trying to imagine what it is, because in reality it's something completely different.
So are you getting you're getting good reception with all of your initiatives, it sounds like. Do you, I still find though
Yeah.
some people
So
I'm sorry, do you ever find
no,
that
no,
people,
please.
when you're explaining something, their eyes kind of glaze over, they just can't get interested in it? That's shocking to me that you're in this body. This body's going to carry, you only get one. I find it amazing. That's why I was so heartened to see what you were doing. That some people just, their eyes literally glaze over.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can tell you what I have discovered along the way. So when I discovered this, it was so fascinating to me and such a no-brainer that everyone would be as fascinated as myself and they would apply this.
Exactly.
I just had to send them the information for them to wake up. You know, that was my naive mindset at that point. And I had to face reality, which was really ugly, to be honest. People so focused on the short term, um, on what they are going to do tomorrow, by the end of the month, eventually by the end of the year, but not farther away.
Absolutely. That's
Parents,
true.
relatives, friends who just don't care. They live on a daily basis, not trying to imagine and to plan what's going to happen with them in 10, 20 years. Um, People considering that because that nothing hurts, then they are in good health. And even doctors suggesting exactly the same philosophy of life. So yeah, it was a cold shower for me. It was shocking to see this. And of course, at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur, so the market is always right. You can imagine everything you
Absolutely.
want, but if the market isn't there, it doesn't matter what you think. You just need to adapt and take people where they are exactly. So to be honest, I have discovered very fascinating stuff about this. People sort of suppress the notion of death from their consciousness.
True. That's true.
Like death is the absolute evil, and our culture educates us to like sort of ignore this, consider it doesn't exist.
You're absolutely
So
right. My
that's one
mother
thing.
would never talk about it. She was terrified of death, and she never would talk
Yeah,
about it.
and,
Yeah,
and
I
myself,
agree.
I wasn't able to convince my parents to apply preventative medicine. And now, when they have some health problems, everything becomes very important, and they are doing things that they should have been doing for years, and now things are worse or they are irreversible, and that's life, you know. So I'm so sad to see them in such a condition, but at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you only have what you deserve, you know. There's consequences to your attitudes and to your actions.
Well, that's true.
However, yeah,
Go ahead.
however, what I have discovered um, is that people who wake up and they reach a sort of state of mind where they're really going to move into the right direction is two things. First, they need to be relatively financially stable, well off. Not to say rich, but if you have problems to pay your bills by the end of the month, what happens in 10 years is not none of your concern. So that is one thing. So this amounts to, say, 10% of the population, to be honest. But it's not enough. It's not enough. I see every day people who don't have financial problems, so to say. It's the least I could say, but they're still not moving into preventative medicine. They're not taking care of themselves, even though they are in an age range that is really where it's really important to do so. What needs to happen is also to have an accident, a health accident, even eventually in your own life or around you, relatives, friends. And this is going to strike you. And if you have some amount of money and you have that kind of unfortunate event in your life, then those two parameters are going to move you in the right direction. But unless you have both of them, usually people don't wake up and they just look the other way.
Do you think they're just so involved in their own immediate life? And I think you're right. A lot of people are looking at the end of the quarter rather than the future. And I
Yes,
think,
because that's
yeah,
that's how society works right now. And it's not to say, not to speak about philosophy and religion and politics, but it's short term. Today we live in a sort of dictatorship of the short term in the Western countries. We educate ourselves to believe it's a democracy. Yes, it's a democracy because you can vote for the people you want, to run the country. But we all live in a dictatorship of short term. You need stuff right now, and everything that is on the long term doesn't exist. This is why education is so neglected.
it's
Health
crucial
also.
too. It's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. So society is pushing us into this direction. Now, when you understand this and you want to step out of the system and you want to look at the long term to maximize your well-being, like in all your life, not only just for the next year or for the next week, you can do so. So that's the beauty and also the complexity of our world. You can change, but you still need to have the right mindset and you need
Right.
to listen to the right people.
And we always have choice. And the other thing is our bodies always want to heal. Our bodies are always going for our best. I think
Absolutely,
sometimes,
absolutely.
I think sometimes it's really difficult to change habits. You know, I don't know. I feel like if you can start exercising, strength training, I think there's just something about it. It makes you feel really good. And then they talk about long-term effect. I mean, you have to also do cardio. You also need to stretch. I met Tom Brady once, and he actually wrote a book about, in his book, he talked about pliability. And I hadn't really thought about that. Like when you're really young, your bodies are very pliable. As you get older, the muscles get more dense. And he does special exercises for pliability. He got injured very little, and he recovered quickly. So there's just so much available to us to improve our health. So, what would you say? I mean, what are some of your personal habits for health?
Yeah. Um, so first of all, I think I'm pretty good at habit formation and changing. It's not it's there's a science behind it. It's not just personal talent, but you need to have the strategy of the small steps. Move one foot in front of the other, and then do it again. And when you do it enough, you'll eventually move forward um, uh, um, uh, and change things. So that's one thing. Second thing, when you fall back, because everyone at some point, is going to go crazy and will not respect their habits, it's not a problem. It's life. Get back to it. Don't get disappointed. Don't judge
Right.
yourself. You know, start small. People are so ambitious, and the best diet, the best habit, the best physical activity is the one you can stick to for a long time.
True.
No
It's
reason,
true.
no reason to be too ambitious. Give yourself some time. Um, so yes, to get back to your question. So I practice some physical activity every day from Monday to Friday for 1 hour from 8 to 9 a.m. And I do a mix of strength training, high intensity interval training, cardio, and also yoga and for flexibility and stretching, just to
Yes.
keep the muscle flexible and the joints. So that's one thing. Another thing is sleeping at 11 p.m. and going to bed by 10 p.m. or so, approximately, to wind down. Third,
That's
I
hard to
do
do. That
not
is hard to
eat.
do. But when you do it, you feel
Yes,
wonderful. If you get a good
yes,
sleep, there's
absolutely,
nothing like it. I agree.
absolutely,
Your body's
absolutely.
healing itself during the night.
Absolutely. So important. I have completely stopped taking sugar, and all the food that has sugar in it is out of my house, out of my fridge.
Good. Yeah.
Um, Not to say some of them have a low level of carbs. Even carbs, I don't eat. food that has more than 10% of carbs.
Oh,
Because
really?
I'm pre-diabetic myself, because I
Uh-huh.
have glucose issues, in those four chronic diseases, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, metabolic diseases, and then cardiovascular diseases, my risk factors are in the in the type 2 diabetes and metabolic diseases, and in the neurodegenerative diseases. So I'm trying to apply as many preventative measures as possible in order to prevent those kind of diseases. And so zero sugar is one of them. I eat um, the different foods in a specific order. First, the fibers,
Hmm.
then the proteins and the fats, and last, eventually, some carbs, most of the time, a fruit, and not berries in general.
Do you stay away from white flour? A lot of that because that turns to sugar in the body
Yes,
pretty much. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Starch is it's a nightmare for me because now with the CGM, I can really monitor in real time what it does to my body. And something very, very important, which I have overlooked for many years, is the stress levels. So now I have
Absolutely.
educated myself to sort of have an intuition to feel my stress levels because for 40 years in the life I had before, as an entrepreneur in the tech space, everything was going so quickly and you need to be like up to speed every time, almost 24 out of 24. Sometimes I would up in the night and have an idea or something and work or just put it down because my brain was working all the time, all the time. And but as a kid, by the way, my parents told me that I had to take care of myself and I was the only one to be responsible for myself. So I sort of integrated very deeply this kind of mindset. And it brought me to very good things, to be honest, but also to a level of chronic stress that I was not feeling anymore because I didn't
Nice.
have any difference to compare myself to. So it was permanent.
Yeah, I
So
think
at 40, I understood that I had that chronic stress, and what it did to my body was just accelerate the pace of aging. I
absolutely.
ended up having a biological age of 46 when I'm only 43 right now. But the due in pace of aging is below one, which means that yes, I have done lots of stupid things when I was younger, which brought me to a higher biological age than my chronological age. But right now, I'm catching up, and
It's going to
the
reverse. It'll
speed of
reverse.
aging is below than one. Every year, I am aging by 0.88 years.
Oh, perfect. So you're
It's
measuring
it's not
that.
perfect, but it's better than what it was before. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's exciting. I think especially for entrepreneurs, it's a pretty high stress environment. You don't know what's going to happen next a lot of times. I mean, are you going to get when you're at the point where you need funding, are you going to be able to raise the money? Are you going to have to pivot? And you have to pivot a lot. There's a lot of challenges and obstacles, and everything has to be fast because someone else is going to do it. If you
Yes.
bring it to
And what I
market.
want my fellow entrepreneurs to understand is that what it does to their body. And from time to time, it's okay to accept that kind of stress. It's part of life. But if you don't understand this, you could continue with this kind of chronic stress for decades, which is what happened to me. And this is where things can go really bad for people. And by the way, they end up having cancers, being young,
It wears on the body.
ulcers, and
Yeah.
so many other diseases. I have friends around me who, because of chronic stress and high levels of stress, are suffering from all those diseases.
Because if they can have if you, I agree, it's good to have a little bit of stress and it's good to have a little bit of adversity. I see people very successful who've overcome that, but that's just that they overcome it. They use it just like we use AI to go further. They use it to inspire, to create from, because otherwise you can get complacent, you
Yeah,
know, if you
stress is
never have
good.
bumps in the road and things like that.
It's a normal reaction of your body. The problem is when the stress becomes chronic, becomes long term, and you need to stay away of that, or at
It's
least be aware
harmful.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's harmful for the body. It's kind of like stress and also there's another thing. Some people have not a chronic food allergy, but maybe like a low level food allergy that is causing inflammation in the body. Do you have any testing that can show that? Like, for instance, if someone has a peanut allergy, it's pretty obvious. But if someone just has a little bit of a reaction to wheat, maybe not a horrible gluten allergy, but something that's wearing at them, you may not know it for 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a
Yeah.
story about this. One of my friends who suffers from IBS, the irritable bowel syndrome, which is a very common and multi-factor disease. And doctors don't know exactly what to do about this. And nobody told him, I mean, everyone told him to take some drugs against pain, to live with it, to cope with it. It's part of life. And recently he started changing his diet because I'm talking about this and sort of after so many uh, so many discussions and some harassment on my side for him to change. He said, okay, I'm going to try this. So he tried the low carb and keto diet. And he told me that it completely changed his symptoms for IBS. So it's absolutely incredible. And then
And he
you have
doesn't have
some
it. That's
he
wonderful.
he doesn't it's no it's much lower, he said. It's much lower and nobody ever told me about this. So it's absolutely incredible that such small changes, can produce so huge consequences.
It's so no one mentioned him diet with IBS? Not really. Not,
Unfortunately not, because he didn't
yeah,
listen to the right people, but then it's
right.
very difficult to
Yeah,
listen to the right people when nobody's talking about this.
right.
Just
And you
like
don't
me for
know.
eczema and like the different symptoms I had problems with my skin, itching, being red, being inflamed. I had, again, as I told you, dandruff, and nobody told me that I had just need to sleep for 7 hours per night, and I need to cool down and manage my levels of stress.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So between
And then
that,
there's
those two things plus
yeah,
always look at the diet. I mean, because Hippocrates said all illness begins in the gut, and it really seems to bear fruit. I actually, my strength trainer said to me the other day too, he says, everybody complains about how they can't lose weight. But he says what they don't realize is it's not the weight, it's the fork. It's what they're eating. It's not that they can't lose weight, they're working out, they're
absolutely.
exercising. It's all about that. And I think we don't give enough importance to that. You think our
Yeah,
microbiome is
it's
hugely powerful in our bodies.
yes, I have a story which I'm really experimenting right now myself. So in the different treatments and preventative measures that I've taken to mitigate my glucose levels,
Uh-huh.
there's lots of things, but and it worked to some degree, but not enough. I still had glucose levels on average that were 100, 105, which is too high. And my doctor, fortunately, I have a medical doctor with expertise in longevity who is reading a lot of stuff, which I don't. And he said, okay, so if you've tried everything, you could try some. You haven't tried everything, but like the next thing in line to try is some probiotics coming from
Excellent.
Pendulum. It's called really expensive, but it's worth the try which populate your gut with some specific bacteria that are going to help you manage the glucose levels. And you know what? I've been taking them for a week now. Like my glucose levels are up at 90. It's
Really?
it's a breakthrough. It's absolutely incredible.
Is it
Absolutely.
Akkermansia?
No, it's not. It's like they say proprietary. They don't give the
Oh,
detail
okay. They
of
don't tell
the
you
the
what it is. Because I
bacteria,
just started last week
but
too, taking something. Yeah.
yeah, it's called pendulum glucose control. I mean, I don't have any interest in them. I've just, it's
Yeah.
important to no conflict of interest. And I've been taking them for only a week, so it's maybe too early to draw any conclusions. But still, you after a year and a half, I still have different things that I'm trying right now, and I will be trying anytime soon. And it's a never-ending process. So yes,
Yeah.
the gut microbiome is absolutely astounding. It can
It's
be the solution for so many health problems we have.
Absolutely. And I didn't even really know it existed till a couple of years ago. And Stephen Gundry, Dr. Stephen Gundry, who's a cardiologist, and he's all over the internet and sells a million products. And he actually is my cardiologist now because I figured he was taking patients. But I was so impressed with him. I read his book, The Plant Paradox, and he describes the microbiome as being in charge of a huge condominium. And the good gut buddies want it to be nice and they want to live in a nice environment and they'll take care of your health. But if the gut gangsters move in, they do things like they reek holes in the lining of the intestines and they get through it and havoc results. I'm an artist too, and I was so inspired. I started doing sketches and I hired an animator to show this kind of condominium and the Good Gut Buddies are cleaning. And if you look up Good Gut Buddies on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, my gifts will come up for my designer, which is really cool. And I have one that says
Really
homeostasis,
nice.
sweet homeostasis. But I was so overwhelmed. It was like science fiction reading that. I had no idea all this was going on. I was ignorant to it. And
And
honestly, it's
it goes
fascinating.
much further than that. Because there's a saying that you're the average of the five people you're spending the most time with. I don't know if you've
I
heard of
have heard
this.
that. I
It's
have heard that.
Yeah, maybe different versions, different keyword, but
Yeah.
words, but the meaning is here. And you know what? I've recently read a study about this where they really uh, demonstrate from the scientific point of view what this means is that your mood in general is highly related to your microbiome.
I
And
agree. Yeah.
when yes, and you hang out with different people, because of the different social interactions you have with them, just shaking your hands or maybe kissing on the cheek or stuff that is very common, at least in Europe, or hugging. Well, if you hang out with them enough for enough time, like the microbiome is going to sort of harmonize to a
It's on your
certain
skin.
extent.
Your community, they're your
Yes, and
stitching.
you will
Yes.
absolutely, and you will end up having partially the same microbiome that you're like the other people, and
Wow.
it could help you have the same mood as themselves, and it goes in the like positively or negatively. So this is where this
Wow.
idea of hanging out with the people that you'd like to look like is really important, and this is where science explains how this is working,
That's really interesting.
the
And then you
exact
don't want to be around the
mechanisms.
ones that are always negative and sick all the time, unless you want to impart,
Welcome to the club. Me neither.
because yeah, well, time is short, I think, so you want to spend it in the best way. I'm really enjoying talking to you because I feel like you're kind of on the same road I was, but here you are this many years later, and you have so many more advances to start from, which is really exciting, and the knowledge of it. I think, what do you think for your age group? Do you see people kind of getting more interested too? Because my age group, I mean, there's so many people, there's lots of groups of everything, but generally speaking, like I'll show my animation, I showed it to one of my business groups, and I'm all excited. Here's my animation. 80% of the people, their eyes is glazed over. They could have not told you one thing they saw, which I think, but you're right. If they get sick, now they're interested.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's an inflection point at around 40 years old. I have lived it myself, and I see it also around me because the people I hang out with are approximately my age. So at 40, you reach the peak of your shape, physical shape, and also more or less maybe intellectual shape. And from that point on, you start decreasing,
I'm a
or
late
you're
bloomer. I don't
stable at
agree with
least.
that. I don't
Oh
agree with
yeah,
that.
on average. No, on average. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
people who don't really care of
No, I'm just
themselves,
teasing.
and at the same time, they have parents who are starting to have different chronic diseases, and people around them who have been super stressful, and they get heart attacks or cancers or stuff like that. And one way or the other, little by little, they need to face this reality that we are living beings and we're limited, and we are sort of in the middle of something, and from now on it's going to be stable or decreasing. And this also contributes to that consciousness they have that they really should be taking this seriously. Not enough, again, until they have a tangible health
Right.
accident themselves, but it's still, it's different stuff that influences them marginally until there's an inflection point. At that time, they are our perfect patients who say, okay, I've seen my father, he had this problem. I don't want to follow the same path as himself. What do I have to do? What do I have to pay? And, that's like the patients that we have. This is where we take them and we give them directions and assist them in their longevity journey.
Do you subscribe to the theory of intermittent fasting or fasting period?
I do it. I do it. I've been doing it for the wrong reasons, but with the right consequences since I was a teenager, 15 years old or so,
Uh-huh.
because I really wanted to sleep 15 minutes, an additional 15 minutes, and I wouldn't take breakfast for that. So I got used to only having lunch and dinner
Uh-huh.
and no breakfast. I know it's better to not have dinner and have breakfast. Okay, so I'm not perfect. But
Well,
anyway, so I do that 1680,
yeah.
fasting where I
Uh-huh.
don't eat for 16 hours and I only eat for the 8 remaining hours out of the 24.
I do the same.
So
I do the same. And
so
I
it
I
works
miss
for me.
breakfast. Yeah.
You miss bread? Okay, welcome to the club. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not the only one. Happy to hear
Yeah.
that. Again, so there are so many measures that you need to test on yourself and
Right.
eventually do biomarkers, blood tests, feel if that's right for you or not. And I really, my preferred, like the answer I prefer when people ask me, what do you think of this or that? I say, it depends. The magic words are it depends. It depends on
Right.
you. Try it, see if it works, eventually measure something if it's measurable, and then decide for yourself.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think your body will tell you too. Your body will tell you right away if you ate something that isn't going to go very well. And
Absolutely.
even, I don't know, I used to do even muscle testing where you would hold something and they push your arm down. If I'm not sure
Yeah.
how much credence I have in that, but it seemed to work. I'm not really, have you ever heard of that? The muscle testing where you're holding something and they push your arm down. And if you have no reaction
Yeah.
to it, that's kind of old school. We were doing that a lot,
Uh-huh.
like 20 years
Yeah.
ago
No, I
or
haven't heard
something.
of it, but sounds funny
Yeah,
to
exactly.
try.
There's also a trend, I think, to doing less cardio for long amounts of time. I
Yeah, the
think
zone to training maybe. Zone to
like
training.
maybe doing HIIT, doing high intensity interval training and maybe shorter bursts of, which is really how we're designed to like run from the tiger. We're not really designed to run for. Even though, I mean, some people they do great at marathons. I'm not saying they're not wonderful, but I'm just saying a lot of times some people it'll wear on their knees and ankles too much over time as you get older because it's an overuse thing. I worked with a group of bus drivers from the county where I am in, and they all had issues because they're all overusing, their their feet and their knee, that one leg, and they're just constantly putting pressure on it and not exercising at all. And it was so interesting that it makes sense. I mean, we don't think of our bodies as ever wearing out, or doing repetitive motion like a tennis elbow. That's really interesting to me. I wanted, you know what? I'm going to segue into something else. Are you familiar with energy medicine? Have you looked into that at all, like microcurrent therapy and PEMF? I mentioned that.
Yeah, so I haven't tried it. Haven't tried it. It's on my to-do list. And
Okay.
as soon as I try this and I can measure or feel anything, you'll be the first one to be informed about it.
Well, I'll tell you my experience really quick because
Please.
okay, in the mid 90s, my son was about 6 years old, and we were in Vail, Colorado, which is a ski resort. And we were skiing, and we were there for a week, and then we decided to go down one mountain in inner tubes, where you like ride an inner tube down the mountain. And I'm kind of a wimp. I never would go on a black run. I was a good skier, but I stayed on the easy stuff. So here I am, parallel to my son. We come down in the inner tubes, and at the bottom of the hill, I like stand up and I stagger over to my son. And of course, he had a great time. They let my husband go, my then husband, and he came down at 30 miles an hour in the inner tube. He's 200 pounds, 210 or something. And he hits me, knocks me 8 feet in the air. Luckily, I had a ski boot on, so nothing broke. But I had vein damage in my lower right calf for the next 20 years, and I had pain. The blood would pool. It wasn't all the time, but like standing in line at the airport was torture because I couldn't lift the leg up and, relieve it.
Mm.
And, I figured, well, I'm not going to die. And I'd lived with it. And then I was involved. I had a business coach who recommended a doctor to me in California, and he suggested I get this PEMF mat by Beamer, which is a German company, and they've worked with NASA and they've been around 25 years, tons of research. And what it is, PEMF is pulse electromagnetic field. So it delivers little waves of electromagnetism into every cell like a tiny battery charger. So I
Absolutely.
thought,
I'm familiar with the technology. I just haven't tried it yet.
so this is what happened. So I bought this and it's a $6,000 item. It's a mat with a console and then it has some applicators. I didn't take it out of the box for 2 months. And I put it in the bed. You lie on it 8 minutes in the morning and 8 minutes at night. I mean, I'm athletic, but a couch potato could even use this because that's all you do. And I never even used the applicators. I didn't know how. So I used it about 10 months later. I had no pain in my leg anymore. It healed. What it does, it increases the circulation of the microcapillaries, which are some are a
Absolutely.
quarter thickness of a hair, and the red blood cells are like stacking up. So it helps the cell heal itself. So I went down that rabbit hole
Yeah.
because of that. And
Yeah.
I,
It makes
yeah,
me think of a red light therapy, very, very trendy in
yes,
longevity right now. And
yes,
it seems it works to a certain extent in certain specific situations. So I'm not surprised at all that different wavelength and electromagnetic waves are influencing like the different biological pathways that
yes.
work in our bodies.
And everything has a frequency. Everything has a frequency. So that to me is a whole new frontier and very exciting.
It
So
is.
there's also something called microcurrent therapy. And I met someone in Colorado who he was a San Diego Padre. He was a baseball player. And he was exposed to all these toxic exposures. Like he grew up in San Francisco next to where they were making bombs for the Gulf War. And he and his mother, he later, but his mother pretty soon after had Parkinson's symptoms, even though she was only 35. And then he had them later, and they attributed it to that exposure. And then as a baseball player, he had had a knee replacement. It was leaking barium into his body. And then
Mhm.
they flew all the baseball players out to California and they did x-rays with dyes in them. Another hit. So he was dealing with all this. Anyway, he got very involved in microcurrent therapy and that he's finding it's healing pain, it's detoxing. So that's a whole nother exciting area that
Yeah,
there's a lot of different
absolutely.
devices, but some of them are
There's
good,
there's so much out there, so
right?
many treatments, so many devices. And again, this is the longevity journey for each one of us. I can
Yes,
understand that some devices work for some people and not for others. And this
absolutely.
is why, it's just like investment. There is no one size fits all investment strategy. And in the same way, there is no one size fits all longevity journey and recommendations. Our bodies are different. So we need to accept this trial and error process where we try stuff and there is new discovery and you try other stuff and it goes on and on in an infinite game.
And I think we're really fortunate that, like, usually trying things isn't going to kill us. It'll either work, it'll have a good effect, it might have a little bit of a negative effect, it might have no effect. But I think what you're doing with your company, your wellness company especially, you're checking all the right boxes. You're testing the blood, you're doing screenings, you're doing VO2 max, you're doing the DEXA, you're looking at the diet, you're looking at the exercise. Because just with that, I think you don't really have
Yeah,
to do anything else. I mean, it's good to try other stuff like what I'm talking about, but I think you can have a pretty healthy, optimal health journey if you're conscientious about that stuff.
absolutely. There's so much basic stuff to do. You don't need to look for the like super sophisticated devices. You do that when you've done everything from the fundamentals and what you want to go further. But
Right.
there's so few people who do like the essentials, and there's no point in them looking further. Now, we have some
Absolutely.
patients, to be honest, who are tech um, enthusiasts, and they want like the last technologies, they like PEMF, as you say, or red cell therapy, or HBOT, like hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and so
Yeah.
on, therapies, and so on. And I'm like, okay, you want to do this? It's your money. We have like a whole process where we help them with whatever they want to do. We tell them. So we have process where we recommend like the 80/20. There's a tag 80/20, like those are the things that you should be doing that are the most impactful for you. Maybe it's not sexy, maybe you find it's basic, but this is what you have to do if you really care for your longevity and your preventative medicine. If you're like, no, no, I don't need to be told to eat healthy and to move, etc. Okay, no problem. Then you can do like hyperbaric oxygen therapy or DNA sequencing or whatever super sophisticated stuff you want to. But again, it's their choice. But we still give them like the 80/20, and most of the time, fortunately, people follow those recommendations.
And that's actually kind of basic things that everyone should have as normal, I think. You know what I'm saying? I think we should be
Absolutely.
educated about how our bodies work for one thing and how,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and
So right now
yeah,
it's a niche market with people who
it's amazing it
cater
is,
to,
isn't it?
to
It's amazing it
it's
is, but you're right.
it's amazing, but again, only some minority are going to listen to this message for now. But I dream. I mean, I not only dream, I also have this vision. I try to execute on that vision, where governments will end up investing heavily in preventative medicine and educating people to take care for themselves. And it's going to take some time, but this is what we're trying to do with the 2060 Foundation to
Okay. Tell me a little bit
use
more about
some.
that.
Yeah, so the whole project for me is to defeat aging by 2060. So by 2060, I will be 80 years old, 83. And it's I mean, I still have 40 years to go, maybe more if I'm efficient in what I'm doing. But anyway, this is something that I try to imagine myself, in the next 44 decades. And to do that, I have created the 2060 Foundation, whose purpose is to defeat aging by 2060. And that nonprofit is supporting all the long-term projects that private capital doesn't know how to fund. For example, there are in the general governance of countries, there are two aspects that need to be changed. The first one is how we spend money on preventative medicine, because there are a lot of conflicts of interest, and the industry is built in such a way that everything is going towards helping people when they are sick, but not preventing them uh, to be sick in first place. So we need to change that. And it's not to say that the big pharma is going to lose their business. They're going to increase their business, because instead of treating people from 65 to 80 and only a small portion of them who have some chronic diseases, they're going to handle 100% of the population from 20 to 100. And this is more profitable than taking care of the people from 65 to 80, right? So I would like to help them and help society in general transition from the point where we are today to another profitable industry, much more profitable, where we really are aligned with people's interests, to be healthy, to live healthy. And it's going to be profitable for big pharma and the rest of the medical society, so to speak. Okay, so preventative medicine. So that's one thing. What 2060 is also doing is consider advocate for this definition of aging, where we consider that aging is a disease and it's the cause of all diseases. Where right now there's a classification called ICD, International Classification of Diseases, created by the WHO, World Health Organization. And this classification has approximately 50,000 categories where every possible disease has been listed,
Okay.
right? But aging is not one of those 50,000 categories. And because of that, public funding going to research, to medical research, is not going to the process of
Oh,
aging, is going to the chronic diseases, which are the consequences of aging. So for this reason, there is less than 1% today from public funding going to research in aging. All of them go to research against cancer, research against cardiovascular diseases, risk against Parkinson's, and so on. So, that's a very tricky um, legal definition that needs to be changed. And
yes.
this is maybe going to take 10 to 15 years, and it's going to require some lobbyists, some political activists, or call them whatever you want, because I know that lobbying is not a politically correct word, but yeah, that's the reality. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
you're
So yes,
absolutely
we
right.
try yeah,
I'm
we
sorry.
try to help also in this direction to change the definition of diseases so that a portion of public funding goes into research on aging and not only on chronic diseases. And once you have that, everything at the end of the day, there's three things that make anything possible. One, people. Two, technology. Three, resources. Speaking of financial resources, if you have the three of them, then virtually everything becomes possible. So on aging, we are terribly lacking resources. It's a complex problem, and we need appropriate resources to crack the code. And in order for that to happen, we need to spend more.
So I think what you refer to as aging is really the goal is prevention, prevention of degenerative disease, prevention of aging. If you can prevent degenerative disease, then you'll have a longer, healthier life, obviously. And I think I like what you're saying because you're saying shift the disease categories to prevention rather than treating the chronic symptoms.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you're not going to heal at that point necessarily.
No, it's too
You're
late.
not getting to the cause of it. So I think the prevention is putting the research on the cause, putting the research on determining catching it really quickly, like maybe showing up in the
Absolutely.
blood or showing up in your saliva or whatever, showing up in the way you feel, and then addressing it then quickly. Because you're right, you can head things off at the pass, and I think again, what you're giving the 80/20, you're giving people the good basics. I think if people follow the good basics of health, most of them are going to be okay in a lot of cases. But a lot of us, I mean, we're eating fast food all the time, way too much sugar, and too many chemicals in the processed foods. It's the body isn't
That's
designed to deal with it. Our bodies have not caught up with our technology. Our
Yeah,
bodies are
that's
way
this is
behind
this is a
it's
nightmare.
amazing what they
Fast
tolerate,
food
if you want
is
my opinion. It's amazing
yes.
what we get away with without having even faster,
Yeah,
faster.
decline. Decline, absolutely.
Exactly. And what
Yeah,
I really love is that anytime I do something really good for myself, I usually get a pretty good response. And it's so satisfying because it's not that hard. I mean, if I've been traveling a lot and I just kind of feel out and I start walking or I start doing strength training, it just changes the game immediately. And I think if
it
people
does.
can get hooked up into that, pretty quickly, I think you're offering a lot. I'm very impressed with all aspects. You have like a lot of things going at once. You're kind of covering all the bases because you have the foundation, which is and you're encouraging the research and people, coming forward with new ideas. And then you have a community you're inviting people to join. And then you also have an entity that can help people. So I don't know what you're leaving out. I can't think anything. I
Um,
think you're doing
and
well. I
and
think it's
then
helpful.
yeah, so right now we have planned the execution, and as they say, we need to start executing on our plan because it's all an execution
Right.
challenge here. The idea is the right one, I think. We are building an ecosystem from the ground up, the longevity ecosystem. There's going to be an inflection point at some point. they will discover some breakthrough technology to lengthen people's lives by 5 years, 7 years. There are different technologies, different drugs in trials right now. Tropamycin is one of them, but not the only one. And at that point, everyone is going to wake up to this huge new opportunity. And I think it's going to be the best investment opportunity in the history of humanity. What is worth more than your life? How much people are going to pay to live longer and healthier? No limit. So I really think we are tackling here something that is not only um, moral, but also super profitable. And I'm trying to make a case out of it and to
Yeah.
convince as many investors to invest more in with me. By the way, I'm also investing into those technologies, into those startups. So yeah, I think we are covering all the big um, components of longevity
Are you getting a
here.
lot of good ideas coming in to be funded?
I wished I was able to fund all the good ideas. Not all of them are good, but
Uh-huh.
there are many that are great, and they just have a very limited resources of funding. So research is going slower, it's taking
Yeah.
longer. We are getting older. I would like to be able to have access to those technologies, and I wish they were accessible like in 5 years, not in 20. But
Right.
because there's so little money invested into this, it's going at um, suboptimal pace of research. But yes, there are many, many ideas, many more good ideas that the ones that we are able to fund with the current state of funding
Where
worldwide, not only the United
are you
States.
noticing any countries that seem a little more progressive than others or universities? I know University of
Yes,
California,
yes.
San
So
Diego does a
yeah,
lot.
so
Yeah,
so
go
that's
ahead.
interesting. So that's very interesting. Um, there are different countries, a couple of countries that are rich countries and countries where the rates of natality are so low that they have a big, big problem. Like right now, not in the next 10 or 20 years. I'm talking about South Korea, where the natality factor is zero point 0.9 or something like that, which is less than half of the one that we should have, which is 2.1, 2.2, to
Wow.
renew the population.
Right.
And then you have Singapore, same stuff. I think they want one of the lowest in the world. So these people don't want to make kids and they're rich, which is like the ideal stance for them to heavily invest in longevity. And I'm happy for that. And by the way, they have hired in Singapore, they have hired some of the best American experts in the field, one of them being Brian Kennedy. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was director of the Buck Institute, which is one of the main institutes on the research on aging in the United States. So they have hired him, and now he's been working in Singapore for a couple of years already, and he's a scientific advisor for our foundation. So I
Uh-huh.
happen to know him really well.
Well, that's
And
great.
yeah, Singapore is considering this as a national priority. And
Nice.
South Korea,
Okay.
by the way, they have created a network of clinics, longevity clinics, but not private ones, ones that every citizen has access to. And like their tagline is live 100 healthy years. So it's not science fiction anymore. It's not marketing
Nice.
anymore. Governments are really pouring money into this. So yeah, when it comes to research on aging and Japan also, I told you about
The
those teeth
teeth.
regrowing, but they are so crazy about the research because they have some very big problems, and unfortunately for them, they have to fix them as a priority, and the rest of the world is going to take advantage of the discoveries that come on the
Yeah.
market
So,
thanks to their research.
so it sounds like a lot of discoveries are going to be coming out of Asia. A
Yeah,
lot.
most likely. And then there are some very interesting initiatives, like for example, in some countries from Caribbean countries, like Honduras, for example, they have a jurisdiction where basically any therapy is authorized, which is far
Really?
from the case. Yeah, absolutely. So this
Wow.
is where Brian Johnson um,
Okay.
got gene therapy because it's not allowed. It's illegal in the United States. It's illegal in Europe because it hasn't been validated, right? So there are too many risks, and even people who agree to take those risks are unable to benefit from those treatments because it's
They're
illegal.
illegal.
Yeah, but in such countries such as Honduras and
Interesting.
some others, you can do basically whatever you want to. And Tony Robbins also got a stem cell treatments and therapies somewhere in the Caribbean also. I don't know if it was Costa Rica or I don't remember exactly, but yeah. So small jurisdictions that offer much more freedom to research. And it's it's like a jungle. You have everything out there. You can
Yeah.
lose your life because you have accepted some experimental treatments and it wasn't serious enough. But you can also get cured from some diseases that have no cure, official cure in the United States and France and Europe.
It seems like we're just at the beginning of so much discovery and so many possibilities. There's also, you have to be careful because there's a lot of scammers out there as always. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I try to follow the science, follow the scientists. And there's a lot of that too. I think Joe Dispenza is somebody I'm really interested in with meditation. And he actually he's works with the University of California, San Diego, and they were shocked to find what they did with the people who were meditating, like the brain waves, what they could measure the strength of it, even to the point where some of the people, when they went through the equipment in the airport, it would go off because they had so much activity going on. They said, "Do you have something in your head? On your head?" As his brain was just
Mm.
set the machine off.
I
And
see.
another one, I think it was Joe Dispenza himself, had something in the heart area. See, it's so much energy there, that
Mm.
electrical energy because it is the vibrations and the frequencies. And I mean, I find I'm really appreciative of having my life where I started, which was also probably the only age of freedom for women that seems to be going away a little bit now in our country. But I kind of went through that, and then to see all this discovery and possibility, and to be as healthy as I am at my age. I take no medication. I don't have anything terrible going on. What I told you about with the Beamer, that was probably the worst thing, and that was healed.
Yeah.
So to be able to really be proactive in your health, and I'm very preventive because I'll tell you what my thing was. I had two stepfathers die with lung cancer by the time I was 25. I didn't want to get sick. They went through terrible things. So what can I do not to, so my whole life has been kind of preventive because I didn't want to have the outcomes of, really terrible things like
Yeah.
I don't drink alcohol, things like that.
Which brings us back to the story I told you about people who are our ideal patients, who have, some financial stability, but most importantly, have had some health accidents in their family, which was like the right wake-up call for them to start their longevity journey or preventative medicine journey.
And even though they weren't blood relatives to me, and people put a lot in their heredity, but I think the science is saying now it's really 5% of what you're going to have. It's more your lifestyle. And they say,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
That's nature is sending us such a such a hopeful message with this epigenome.
right.
Um,
Yes.
and in the year 2000, when they have discovered, Craig Venter discovered. I mean, he was the first one to decode the whole genome, human genome. And by that time, I still remember President Bill Clinton saying, "Okay, we have uncovered the secret of human biology. Everything comes from our genome." And this will allow us to discover everything from curing cancer, everything. And in fact, they overlooked one point is that, as you say, your genome accounts only for a small portion of what your biological evolution is going to be throughout your life. And the rest is your epigenome, is how you activate or inactivate or inhibit some portions of your DNA. What you eat, um, how you manage your stress, how healthy relationships are
Huge,
in the healthy relationships you have.
huge.
So this is your epigenome, and it accounts for, as you say, more than 50%. Maybe some people say that even two-thirds or 75% of what your life is going to be and the disease that you're going to suffer from or not suffer from.
I think one other aspect that gets overlooked sometimes is I think people have to have a sense of purpose and they have to
That's
be,
mental health. That's
yeah, mental health
absolutely.
is huge. It's huge and it's the attitude too. Like, do you look at everything as bad or you look at everything as good and full of possibilities or the end of the world's coming? It depends.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah, and we
again,
we
at
get to
some
choose a
point, I
lot of this.
thought, yes, yes, and it's so important for our well-being, but also the length of our life. And again, I thought this was a little bit um, mysterious, and I didn't really understand the mechanisms behind it. But in fact, it's pretty easy. You have lots of hormones and the mood you have and the state of mind you have influence your hormones, and your hormones are going to influence how your organs work or don't. Again, the example of stress is the most important one, but there are many hormones out there, and the balance between the different hormones are influenced by your mood, and they influence, in turn, your organs and how they work. So there is science behind it. It's not
Yes.
only
Yeah.
superstition.
And the mind-body connection. I mean, your eyes are the body's way of looking out at the world, and you're seeing this and how your emotions are affects every cell. Like, excuse me. If you feel really good and you feel positive, you stand up straight and your body's all ready to go. But if you feel sad, I feel like the cells are almost closing in on themselves and nothing's working as
Absolutely.
well. I mean, just that little bit of that obvious a feeling, I think has an impact. So
Absolutely.
everything matters. Everything matters. And I really don't have any other questions for you right now. I'm very excited about everything we talked about. And I've learned a
Yeah,
lot
me
from you,
too.
and I think your generation will learn a lot too. And I think you're giving a lot of opportunity, which I will definitely try to promote because I think it's pretty wonderful. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah, I'm glad to have met you,
Um,
Gabrielle, very much.
yeah, me too. Me too. And you really don't look your age. Congratulations.
Well,
You're
thank you. I'm very
you're an
mature.
example.
I haven't grown up yet. Is it time? I just forgot. Well, I decided I was always going to be happy because I figure I only have one life that I know about. I'm not saying for sure, but this one life. I'm going to be happy because I could see, I learned early that you can choose to be miserable. It's not hard. There's
Yes, it's
plenty
a
of things to
choice.
find wrong.
It's a choice.
There's things that
Absolutely.
are wrong with everything, but to me, everything's a spectrum. I try to find that Goldilocks zone in the middle, and I try not to stay
Hmm.
in the negative because all it does, like I said, your cells just kind of crash in on themselves, and nothing healthy is going to come out of that, I don't think. So
Absolutely.
I love
You're
it's like, and believe me, I'm sorry, one more thing. The internet, what a gift. I'm serious. I told you I mean, I was a graphic designer, but when it was manual, if you can imagine that, everything had to be
yeah,
done manually. And now I can do a video on TikTok in a minute. It's like for free. We used to spend thousands of dollars on one little video. It's like
mind blowing.
it's mind blowing, and it's like the social media is like a playground to me because it's fun. I can do it quickly, and yeah. So I'm
Likewise.
really
Yeah, yeah,
enjoying all
it's
the
great.
things of these days. Now, I'm kind of I like energy medicine, the things that are happening with that, the microcurrent therapy and the PEMF because I had such a good result with it. I mean, that was stellar to be able to heal. Like, and I've used it on people and I'm not allowed to say it heals pain, but it does reduce inflammation, and people feel different right away because it's so sophisticated now. It's not like when they started 25 years ago, they have a newer model and there's all these coils and all these waves that are patented and They actually did a study with NASA. NASA invested like $4 million. The astronauts were losing bone density and muscle mass in space
Mm,
because they weren't
mm,
getting
mm,
those vibrations from the Earth that
mm,
we need. And they
mm,
were able to rectify that, which is crazy. And then they had a race across America where The Germans brought the Beamer mats in their van behind the riders, and they finished the race 2 days earlier than the Austrians. They kept putting the riders on the Beamer because it helps you recover fast. So all kinds of interesting stuff. It sounds like science fiction to me, really. But so I'm kind of dwelling in that little area now, like energy medicine, because it's fascinating. And I think you're providing what everybody needs to do, honestly. Blood work and screenings, proper diet, proper medical professional advice, because you need a partner, like someone to talk to things about. And there's so many doctors that aren't on that wavelength, but the ones that are kind of magical. And then
Yeah.
exercise. You can get away with a lot if you exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the 80/20. Again, it's complex. I mean, it's easy to imagine what it is, but it's complex to find exactly the right package and the right mix for you, for each one of us. And a medical doctor is there to help you with a health coach. And then, accept a process that is going to take a lot
A
of
lifeline,
years,
a
maybe your
lifetime.
life.
Right.
Yeah, a lifetime.
But
Absolutely.
you do change. I mean, you change in what worked for
And you
you.
change. Yeah,
Yeah,
your life
last year you
changes, your
might have to
priorities
modify.
change.
But I'll look at all the information that's available and all the ways to measure it. And that's always improving too. Like
Yeah,
blood
mind
work is,
blowing.
what do you think about like reduced glutathione drips, things like that? I'm just curious. Do you do any of
What,
that?
what, what do
Re
you say?
Reduced glutathione as an injection?
Oh, yeah, I haven't looked into it yet, so I don't have any opinion about it.
So that was prescribed to me by my DO several times for different reasons.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure I had it for mercury. I was exposed to mold in a hotel in Italy.
Mm.
And that was one thing I did. It was reduced glutathione. They actually inject it. People inject it, but I had it in a nebulizer. And that was very
Hmm.
helpful for cleansing the lungs. That was so I'm more into the futuristic stuff, as young as you are.
We are on the same wavelength. Welcome to the club again. It's great.
But anyway, there are drip lounges where people get different, like vitamin C or B12, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
reduced
well, the problem
glutathione is
with
something my DO has given me in
yeah,
the past for
mm.
liver
The
detox too.
problem with supplements and vitamins is that people take them without any um, measurement, any precise protocol, and you can harm yourself. You can waste your money, or it could be good for you. And if it works for your friend, but it might not work for you.
Absolutely.
So, my personal opinion, I'm not the only one, and it's maybe not very practical, but to me, the only way of doing things right when it comes to supplements, nutraceuticals, and vitamins is to have your blood work on a regular basis, like every 6 months or so. And based on
Absolutely.
that blood work, to take different supplements and eventually stop taking them when in the right time, when you have the next checkpoint and everything. So people don't do this. Most of the time, they have heard of their friend who is taking something and there is a miraculous effect to it, and so they're taking it also, and it could work for him or it could be only subjective experience, you don't know. And I think there is a lot of shady stuff when it comes to supplements because of
True.
this lack of scientific approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a company in Fort Lauderdale called Life Extension, and I've been going to them for decades. And I like them because they do a lot of research. That's kind of their thing. I actually knew the president of the company once, and he was complaining. He had worked for my then husband at the time. He said, they won't let me spend any money on marketing. All they want to do is research. And I'm like, yes,
That's good.
exactly, exactly. And they're a pretty good resource if you ever wanted to look a supplement up in Florida. They
So it's
have
called life extension, right?
Life Extension. Yeah. They're a huge
I've heard
mail
of
order
them.
house, but they're
They- They're
headquartered in
they're
Florida.
some of the most prestigious, right? In supplements.
Life Extension, because
Yes.
their research is fabulous. A lot of my vitamins are for them. And
Hmm.
I have a podcast I did with the director of clinical research there as a friend of mine. I've been going there. The first time I went there and I did blood work, Oh my God, I was 40, so that was like 35 years ago, or even in my 30s. And they didn't have a doctor on staff then, they had a biochemist. And I said to him, I'll never forget, I said to him, I said, well, I'm taking 40 grams of soy protein a day. I was really proud of myself. I was trying to go plant-based. He goes, oh, but it's a trypsin and enzyme inhibitor. That's not good, So he knew that then. There's so much, there really is. And the body's a lot of real estate. You have to be careful. I agree. Supplements, you need to be working with a medical professional for
Yeah.
sure.
For example, a
Blood work.
very, very, very concrete example from my life. Um, I was taking, so I had concentration of calcium, which was higher than the normal ranges. So my medical doctor recommended I take magnesium because magnesium reduces the concentration of calcium. So guess what? After 6 months of magnesium, I did my blood work again, and I had too much magnesium. So hadn't I taken those blood labs again 6 months after I started, I would continue to take magnesium because, my doctor told me to.
Right.
But I would harm myself because I was going from too much calcium to too much magnesium. So I stopped it. But this is just an example of how you can sort of control and monitor those biomarkers and adapt your diet and also the supplements you take based on the results of your blood labs.
Well, I have to tell you one more story that you triggered in me because you said the calcium. One of the next blood test after that first one, I went to a doctor in Florida, and on the wall was a sign, and it said, "Where calcium floweth, death followeth." Where calcium floweth, death followeth. I thought, okay, fine. I get my blood work report, and the only thing out of range is the calcium. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to die? Because calcium doesn't go high unless, well, you were able to manage it with the magnesium, but in a lot of cases, it's a parathyroid issue.
Mm,
So then I went to my great DO, and so we looked into that, and I was testing high on parathyroid, and that means a benign tumor in one of the four parathyroid glands. Well,
yeah,
I'm a real
yeah,
wimp about surgery and all that, and I went to endocrinologist, and he goes, "Yeah, you're going to need a 2 to 4 hour surgery, and you might lose your voice. And here's this big gallon to collect your urine for the next 24 hours, and do this, that, and the other." And I like walked out of there. I said, "I'll find another way. I'm not going to undergo a surgery like that where I could lose my voice." So I researched for the next probably 5 years, and I eventually found a team of doctors in Tampa that did an 18-minute minor surgery, and I went there and had it. But I mean, most people would have just gone and done the surgery, or a lot of people probably would have just gone and done the surgery. But I had to find another way, and I researched. The same week I found those two doctors, I found an Israeli doctor who had some kind of drug that helped. But so there's a lot of different ways, there's a lot of different paths. 18
absolutely.
minute
And that's
surgery.
another,
Yeah.
yeah, that's another important message that I think we need to pass to your audience. The doctors are not gods. And medicine is a science, but it's very complex, and we don't
Yes.
understand much about it. And there's this story about Ray Dalio. You may have heard of him, one of the biggest billionaires in the world, living in the United
What
States.
was his name again?
Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio. He has one of the most successful hedge funds in the
Okay.
world, and now he's like pretty old. But 10 years ago, um, doctors have discovered a tumor in his throat or esophagus. I don't know, remember exactly. So that doctor told him, "You need to have surgery like tomorrow, and the risks are high, but it's an emergency." And he was like, and lose his voice also. And eventually, it wouldn't work. It was also one of the possibilities. And had he listened to that doctor, he would have entered in the surgery immediately and would have had, unpredictable consequences. But instead of doing that, he asked several opinions to different other doctors. And you know what? One of them told him that he would take some pills. Another one told him that he would have a smaller surgery. There are like five doctors, and one of them told him that we would monitor the evolution of the tumor every 3 months, and we would eventually take a decision if the tumor moves because it can also decrease or it can
Oh,
also stay stable. And you know what? So it happened in 2013. We are in 2024. The guy is still alive. Doesn't have any problem. And just by monitoring, the tumor.
wow. He never had
So
surgery.
that's, no, never had surgery. He never had
Interesting.
anything except for, regular monitoring, eventually to have an intervention if anything happens, and happens wrongly.
I bet he
Anything wrong
modified his
happens.
diet. My third stepfather had esophageal cancer and he ate a lot of processed food, a lot of like deli meats and
Yeah.
things like that. And when my mother would go out
Yeah.
of
No,
town, he would
no
say he was cheating
surprise.
on her and go to McDonald's and he would eat a lot of unhealthy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's junk food. It's a big mess, and people need to know about this.
That's where I think the most impact can take place, the diet and exercise. And
Absolutely, the two most important as you say, physical activity and diet, and the rest. Like there's five levels of intervention in today's preventative medicine. You have um, physical activity from the most impactful to the least impactful. Physical activity, second, diet, third, sleep, very, very
yes,
important. Fourth, mental
absolutely.
health, sorry, um, meaning in life, as you say, meaningful relationships around you, um, how you manage stress management also. And in the fifth component is supplements and vitamins and eventually some drugs, etc. And people turn this upside down and all they want is a pill,
You're
you
right.
know.
That's a good note to end on. I like that. That's a grand finale because you're right. That's absolutely right. Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle. It was really a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you again for having me on your podcast.
Okay.
And if I can be of any help, just let me know. And
Uh,
yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you eventually
yeah,
in the real life next time when I travel to the United
absolutely.
States.
Oh,
And by
absolutely.
the way, I would like also to invite you to the south of France. It's one of the most beautiful regions in the world. I've
It has
traveled in
it
so
happens
many
to be one of
countries.
my favorite places on the
Yeah,
planet. I've been there a couple of times, and to me, the most beautiful drive you can have is along the Mediterranean with the mountains on one side and the ocean on the other.
yes,
It's amazing.
absolutely,
And
absolutely. I've done this a couple of weeks ago with my wife and kids. It was
oh,
brilliant, really super beautiful.
and there was a really cool little hotel in a place called Ez, Le Chevre. Have you ever heard of that? Next to Monaco. That's
Um, No, I haven't heard
I'll
of
cut
that one
this off before
specifically,
then.
but there's many places
Yeah,
around
there's so
Monaco.
many
They're very
places.
beautiful too.
No,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. I will definitely come visit you, and you're welcome anytime. I'm in Florida and Oregon.
Florida.
So
Yeah. Okay.
Oregon, which people don't really, you don't meet anyone who comes from Oregon because I don't think they leave. But like right
Hmm.
now, like the middle of the winter, it rains the whole time. But then the
Hmm.
spring, summer, and fall is the most gorgeous flowers and produce. And they have
Hmm.
mountains. The water's pretty clean there. The air's pretty clean. My son moved there. He was living in Colorado. It got too expensive. So wanted to raise his family in Oregon. And so I'm kind of following them there a little. I'm migrating.
Yeah.
But this time of year, I don't think I can be out of Florida because it's really, I grew up in Baltimore, so I can do gray. It's not a problem for me,
Hmm.
but Florida's really nice this time of year. So you're welcome to if you ever come when you come to the States.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much
Okay.
for the invitation.
Okay, so I'll link all three of your entities, the community, the wellness center, and the foundation. I'll put links in the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
It's
thank
most
you so
welcome.
much. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye again. It was a pleasure. Bye bye.